The first morning in Truro smelled like salt and hot coffee. The rental house was all shiplap and aspirational throw pillows with words like breathe and gather, the kind of place where a stainless steel fridge made promises about uncomplicated happiness. I poured batter onto a griddle and watched the blueberries burst into purple moons. "Claire, seriously, you're already cooking?" Brooke laughed, coming in from the deck in a white linen cover-up that looked sponsored by sunshine. She lifted her sunglasses and grinned, the unbothered grin of someone whose phone never dies and whose hair never tangles. "Blueberry pancakes are non-negotiable on vacation," I said. "It's federal law." Ethan leaned on the island, scrolling. "We should do Nauset Light today," he said. "I want drone shots." Our friends Matt and Julia clattered through the sliding door with a paper bag of bagels, sunburned already after a pre-breakfast run. The house figure-eighted around a kitchen in a great room that held too many throw blankets for June. A framed map of Cape Cod hung above the couch, thin black lines carving sand into geography. I flipped a pancake and tried to forget the angle at which Brooke reached for the coffee pot around my husband, how her hand hesitated, how he moved aside exactly the right distance. Stupid to notice. Stupid to name the air in a room. The pancake sizzled. The ocean, a quarter-mile down a pine-needled path, hissed in its long, inhuman way. We were 38. Good jobs. Good teeth. A marriage measured in an even 10. I had packed the cast-iron skillet because rental pans always betray you. Ethan had packed the drone, the charging cables, the portable speaker that could start a party in a library. "Claire," Julia said, standing on tiptoe to look into the bowl, "how are yours always so fluffy?" "Mine get divorced," Brooke snorted. "Same. They get divorced because you stir them like you hate them," I said. "You have to stop when there are lumps. Imperfect batter makes better pancakes." "Domestic Zen with Claire Whitaker," Matt said, raising his coffee. "The world needs your podcast." "It would be 30 minutes of my stove making death sounds," I said. The kitchen's range hood was mislabeled, buttons that did nothing, metal that hummed but didn't pull. I cracked a joke about air quality. Everyone laughed like we were all in on the same show. We took our blue speckled plates out to the deck and ate in towel-wrapped knees. The sun made a labyrinth of Brooke's tan lines. Ethan's hand was warm on my thigh. He put it there the way a man marks a seat. We were here because Matt had suggested, in the group chat, that we couldn't keep being adults without doing adult vacations. "No more of this 2-hour grill in a backyard," he texted. "A whole week, Cape Cod, the works." We split the cost and the grocery list and agreed to be easy. Ethan had booked the house. Brooke had said she'd bring the vibes, which turned out to be a Bluetooth lantern that pulsed like a jellyfish and a playlist that described itself as surf brunch. The first day was exactly what it should be. We walked until our calves burned, swam until our fingers wrinkled, ate until the deck was a scatter of lemon rinds and crumpled napkins. Brooke wore a bra as a top, and a top as a suggestion. Ethan filmed everything, framing the others with a filmmaker's affection. He had been a media dullard when I met him in Boston, a coder who said the word content like it smelled. Lately he had found angles everywhere, moving furniture to catch light, telling me, "Hold that," when my face accidentally did something it didn't usually do. When the wind came up around 4, we retreated inside. I made chowder with a recipe my mother taught me, chopping onions until I cried and pretended it was the vegetables' fault. Brooke poured white wine and perched on the counter, swinging a leg. Ethan put the drone footage on the TV and we watched ourselves from a god's perspective, small and pretty and happy. By the third day, routine had that sticky sound of tape you've used twice. Pancakes, beach, chowder, cards. The way Ethan and Brooke moved around each other became choreography. He passed her the knife before she asked for it. She laughed one beat too soon. He learned suddenly how to open a jar without swearing. "Trick is in the angle," he said, and she went. Obviously. In the boathouse, a shed with a dinghy that had never met the ocean, I kept the paddleboards. I also kept our cooler there, packed and ready with seltzers and fruit. On Thursday afternoon, I went for the cooler and found the shed door locked from the inside. I knocked because I was stupid. The lock clicked. When it opened, Brooke was inside, cheeks bright, mouth a neat little "oh." "Hey," she said. I was, looking for the beach chairs? I thought we put them back here." "We did," I said. "Behind the cooler." "Right," she said and slid aside in a way that was both apology and exit. As she passed, she dragged a finger along the wood grain of the doorframe without looking. You notice useless things when something important is quietly shedding its skin. That night on the deck, the moon made the ocean's edge a map nobody could read. Matt and Julia went to bed early, claiming they had a sunrise run to enact. Brooke said she would edit something real quick on her phone. Ethan said he'd go help her because she was using the old Adobe app. He didn't kiss me goodnight. He squeezed my shoulder like a coach. I lay in our rental king and watched the ceiling fan rehearse the same argument with itself. Around 2, I got up for water and found the kitchen dark, but not empty. The jellyfish lantern pulsed faintly on the counter like a heartbeat. The deadbolt was thrown. I know. You're asking why I didn't burst into rooms like a sitcom and produce a confession. The short answer is that my parents raised me in a Presbyterian church where the loudest noise was casserole, and the long answer is that the kind of betrayal I suspected prefers silence. It thrives in your refusal to say anything ugly out loud. So I said nothing. Not then. In the morning, I made pancakes and smiled so hard my gums hurt. Ethan kissed me on the cheek like a man negotiating a deal he had already won. Brooke wore my Red Sox cap and complimented my technique in a voice that belonged to a kindergarten teacher. The ocean hissed. It was all tremendously boring. After breakfast, while everyone packed for the beach, I stood at the rental's front door and stared at the Ring video doorbell. I'd noticed it on day 1. It was the sort of thing that made suburban parents feel safer and single men feel spied upon. On a hunch that felt like betrayal with purpose, I opened the App Store on my phone and downloaded the Ring app. When it asked whose doorbell, I pressed sign in, and then forgot password, and used Ethan's email. 2 minutes later, my husband, who believed more in Bluetooth than in privacy, handed me his phone to read a text from Matt about sunscreen. While I held it, a reset code appeared. I memorized digits the way I memorized recipes. In the boathouse, our GoPro sat like a guppy on a shelf. Ethan had been using it for paddleboard footage. I picked it up. The red dot of recording blinked twice before turning steady. He'd set it down without turning it off and walked away earlier this week, feeding the camera 3 hours of lawnmower-level boredom. Or maybe not boredom. I slid the SD card out with a thumb that didn't shake. That night, when the others passed out in sun-tired heaps, I sat at the island with my laptop and a bowl of strawberries. I watched the boathouse video. 90 minutes in, the door opened. Brooke entered in a white sundress that held to her like warm water. Ethan followed in a t-shirt and that face he saves for me when he's trying not to make me laugh in public. They didn't kiss immediately. They locked the door with a carefulness that made me want to laugh just then, an ugly sound that wanted a thrown plate as accompaniment. "Are you sure?" Brooke whispered. He should have said no. That's what my brain, who was a better writer than my life, offered. He said, "I'm tired of being good at the wrong life." I pressed pause there. The frame stuttered. A mosquito sketched a lazy confession across the screen. I put the laptop aside and put my face in my hands. I made exactly no noise. Then I hit play. The boathouse listened. The camera is ruthless in its attention. Ethan's hand on her shoulder, her eyes tracking the floor like possible explanations. He touched her like he was trying to open a door with a stubborn hinge. They made almost no noise. People who believe they're being watched. When they finished believing nothing mattered, Brooke began to cry. It was delicate, an actress's cry, the sort of crying you do when you know what you look like. Ethan pulled her in and put his face in her hair and said, "We'll be kind." They didn't see the red light. I transferred the file to an external drive and tucked it into the book I had brought for show, an essay collection about marriage written by someone who had never been to a repair shop. I slept and woke up and made pancakes. Brooke complimented the maple syrup like it owed her money. Ethan stacked plates and touched the small of my back like a reflex he had developed for practice. We drove back to Boston on Saturday. My house on Dorchester Avenue hadn't changed. The hydrangeas my neighbor Mrs. Alvarez coaxed from reluctant soil bowed with too much blue. The garage door strained itself open like a man standing after a long movie. The air was city air, metallic and warm, and unhelpfully honest. We carried coolers and towels, the business of returning to real life, into our kitchen with its slightly crooked grout and the window that frames the back alley like a movie for cats. Ethan set the cooler down and left it there, because in our marriage that was always my last job. Brooke hugged me long and said, "I love you, friend." She meant it and not at all. On Sunday, my mother called to discuss an article about divorce rates she hadn't read past the headline. "We prayed about it at church," she said. "Not about you. About the institution." "Thanks, Mom." "It won't happen to you," she said. "You two are so solid." I looked at the cooler, still sweating on the tile. "We are a load-bearing wall," I said. "Exactly," she said, cheered. When I hung up, I opened the cooler. Inside, wrapped in a grocery bag, was the GOPRO. Ethan had thrown it in thoughtlessly, or as if he were a character in a play about men who try. The SD card slot was empty. My hand touched the soft rectangle of the external drive in the essay collection on the counter. "You've never met anyone so patient," is what people say about me when they want me to handle their plans. It's also something you say about people who are building a long fuse. Ethan came home from work with that humid energy he gets when he wants to be asked, "How was your day?" "Good," he said before I could. "We have the Habitat for Humanity Gala in 3 weeks. Matt's firm is sponsoring. Brooke's handling the program." "Of course she is," I said like a compliment. "She's good at that stuff," he said defensively. "She just gets it." "I'm sure she does," I said, and reached for a pot to make chili. The first week back from vacation always wants comfort. I diced onions with a violence they deserved. He leaned against the island, that human punctuation mark. "You okay?" he asked finally. "Peachy," I said. "You?" "Yeah," he said. "Just tired." "From the wrong life?" I said. I had a ladle in my hand and pretended it was a microphone. His face did a thing you can't name without sounding theatrical. It tried several options and picked none. "What do you mean?" I turned the heat down and wiped my hands on a dish towel that had seen too much. "You really want to do this here? Or do you want to go downstairs and see yourself in 1080p? "Claire," he said. A plea. A warning. A man walking through a door and suddenly noticing the step down. "Boathouse," I said, and tasted the chili. "Thursday, 3:12 p.m. You told her you were tired of being good at the wrong life. I assumed the wrong life was me. Silence is expensive. We held it like we were bidding against each other. He inhaled like he could take air from me. It was a mistake. Which part? The wrong life or the honesty? Don't," he said. "Don't make jokes. This is... God, Claire. We can fix this." "Sure," I said. "We can fix the boathouse." He reached for me as if the argument might be draped over my shoulders and could be removed. I stepped away. He looked past me then, to the back window, to his own reflection in the glass. It was a stupidly beautiful evening, the kind artists use to get away with cliches. "We can go to counseling," he said, finding a script. "We can," I said. "But you'll need to do that with your therapist and your PR team, because your work's code of conduct is very clear about not using company sponsorship events to, what's the phrase? Compromise the dignity of the workplace." "Are you threatening me?" he said. And that was the man I had always suspected we kept under the bed with the extra winter blankets. "No," I said. "I'm prepping the mise en place." "Don't do this," he said. "Don't bring work into it." "That's where you live," I said, and stirred the chili. He left the house at 10 p.m. He took an overnight bag we keep for weddings. I heard the clatter of hangers in his closet and thought of a string quartet preparing for the second movement. In the morning, I went to a lawyer named Denise who smelled like Sharpie and Victory. She was my friend Jenna's aunt and had a storefront office in Jamaica Plain where the chairs looked designed for people who tell the truth. I described the boathouse video. I described habitual kindness like it was a detrimental habit. "So you have evidence," she said dryly. "That makes you a unicorn." "I don't know what I want," I said. "I want to not feel like my kitchen is an airport." "You want power," she said. "Which is reasonable. There are lawful ways to get it." We began. Denise told me to open my own checking account, to copy the tax returns and the retirement account statements, to stop being the person who knows where we keep stamps and start being the person who knows our mortgage rate. She told me not to move out. Possession is a suit you wear with confidence, she said. Don't take it off. At home, I cooked. You hold a knife and you tell onions what to do. You simmer and decide the flavor. When Ethan came by at noon to talk, Mrs. Alvarez from next door sprayed her hydrangeas with a hose like a witness. She gave me a look that translated to, "If I hear yelling, I will call everyone." We didn't yell. He stood at the island like a shopper. "Let's not do lawyers," he said. "We can be adults." "We can," I said. "Adults also keep records. I've emailed you a list of what I need." Denise had written the list. It was 2 pages long and had bullet points that felt like cavalry. He scanned the list and his face cracked a little. "Why do you need my work laptop serial number?" "Because the company will say the boathouse video is personal, and you will say the affair happened off duty, and I will say the gala program was jokingly titled Raise the Roof 2 weeks before it was finalized, which suggests that you and Brooke were already building the roof you plan to raise. Because the company will care about timelines. You're going nuclear." "That implies there was peace," I said. He left with the list. I went to the boathouse footage again, not to watch, but to confirm the frame rate and the timestamp overlay. I cut the clip cleanly, no edits but at the beginning and end, and I wrote a neat email to myself outlining chain of custody like I was a detective in a show where everyone drinks black coffee and never laughs. 2 days later, I came home with grocery bags and found 2 Boston police officers on my steps. Mrs. Alvarez stood on her porch with her hand over her mouth. "Claire Whitaker," one said, "we have a report of domestic assault." It's impressive, the precision with which fear can become fury. "From who?" "Your husband, Ethan Whitaker. We need to ask you a few questions." "Come in," I said, because I'm not a lunatic. Inside, the kitchen smelled like garlic and lemons. The officers were polite and uncomfortable, men who would rather be doing anything else. Ethan appeared 10 minutes later, with Brooke behind him for moral support, which is a thing people mistakenly believe they can perform. He had a small bruise on his cheek. "She hit me," he said. "She's been unstable." "Unstable," I repeated softly. "Ma'am," the officer said. "Has there been any physical contact?" "Yes," I said, and handed him a flash drive. "This is video from my neighbor's Ring camera from precisely the time he says I hit him. It shows him slamming his face into my front door because he forgot his key and didn't want to scratch his knuckles knocking, and then Brooke laughing. It also shows him looking at the camera and flipping it off. Mrs. Alvarez emailed it to me an hour ago. The file name includes the timestamp. If you prefer, we can walk next door and she can show you on her phone Brooke's mouth did a thing that could ruin careers if captured." Ethan's ears went red. "Claire, what the—" "I told you," I said. "Everyone has cameras." The officers took the drive, watched the clip on the little screen on their chest computer, and pivoted emotionally the way you watch people do when they realize the truth doesn't need them anymore. They turned to Ethan. "Sir, you need to be careful about filing false reports," he sputtered. Brooke put a hand on his arm and then removed it like it burned. "Thank you," I said to the officers. "Would you like a lemonade?" They declined. When they left, Ethan lingered. "You had to make me look ridiculous." "You handled that," I said. "All by yourself." That night, I wrote to the Habitat Gala Committee. I volunteered to run slides for the auction because I was good with AV. Brooke responded with a heart emoji and 3 exclamation points. I also wrote to HR at Ethan's company anonymously, with details that suggested insider knowledge, but could have been obtained by anyone with curiosity and a calendar. I did not attach the boathouse video. Not yet. I liked the order of operations. Warn, wait, witness. In the days before the gala, Ethan texted like a boyfriend in a comedy. Too many words, too many emojis, thumbs pressing hope into glass. I responded like a lawyer. Brooke posted a photo of a flat white that said, "Work, work, work," in the caption. I made a roast chicken and ate half of it standing at the counter. The gala was at a vineyard in Concord that looked like someone made a bet about how many fairy lights a single landscape could endure. The sponsor banners cheerfully insisted that goodness was a brand. Matt beamed as if he'd personally built houses with his own 2 soft hands. Brooke wore silver and a smile that had to be paid overtime. Ethan wore navy and a watch he got when I used to buy him things that said, "You're a man who makes choices." I had a lanyard. In the AV tent, a teenager with acne and a fish t-shirt guarded a laptop like a dragon with a compromised treasure. "You running Keynote or slides?" he asked. "Slides," I said. "Sponsorships, auction lots, heartwarming photos of people with hammers." "Cool," he said, bored. During cocktail hour, Brooke came in and placed a highball glass near the equipment. "Don't spill," she said, flirty and bossy. "We're going live in 10. "I know how to not spill," I said. "Do you?" she said brightly, and left. Her back was a lesson in posture. The program began. The executive director, a woman with a genuine laugh, told a story about a family's new start. Matt faked humility. People clapped at the appropriate times. The auctioneer practiced his speed. I clicked through slides that did the narrative lifting, as expected. When Brooke's segment began, a look back at the build days, the bright moments, she stood near the stage with a hostess's alertness. She had curated the photos the company's interns had taken. She had chosen a song that dared people to cry. I let it run as designed. People saw themselves giving, hammering, sweating photogenically. And then, as Brooke's voiceover reached the line about community and trust, the screen changed. The boathouse appeared. The frame was careful. The timestamp was visible. The audio was low, so that you had to lean in, which the human body does without permission. Ethan and Brooke came into the shed, closed the door, and locked it with the particular attention of people rehearsing a lie. On the screen, he said, "I'm tired of being good at the wrong life." At first, the room exhaled. Laughter, a small mistake. Someone thought it was a joke, an outtake. Then you could hear the intake, the confusion folding itself into a shape they all recognized, a story about people they knew. Brooke made a noise that belongs to animals. Ethan took a step forward as if he could physically block the screen with his body. On stage, the executive director froze, then turned with the grace of someone who has had toddlers puke on her shoes and kept smiling. I did not linger on the footage. 10 seconds is plenty for a brain to write an entire chapter. The slide shifted to the Habitat logo, the song resumed, the room tried to pretend it had seen a different thing. I stood. I took off my lanyard and handed it to the teen dragon. "Thank you," I said. "Sorry for the surprise." "Whoa," he said. "That was... whoa." In the crowd, murmurs drew lines through people. Matt looked like a man doing math. Julia put a hand over her mouth the way Mrs. Alvarez had. Several of Ethan's colleagues stared at him the way you stare at a colleague when you realize the email you ignored was an alarm. Brooke walked as if her shoes had committed a betrayal. She disappeared. I found the executive director at the edge of the stage. "I'm sorry," I said, and it was a real apology. "I should have warned you. You deserved better." She held my gaze for a long time. "Are you okay?" "No," I said, honestly. "But I will be." She nodded once, like a decision. "I'm not going to ask you for the file," she said. "But if HR calls, I will tell them I'm disappointed in the professionals who put me in a position to be embarrassed." "That sounds right," I said. When I left the tent, Ethan was waiting in the parking lot, that human punctuation mark dragged into a new sentence. "Why?" he said. "Because you filed a false report and tried to have me removed from my own house," I said. "Because you used our friends and their hearts like props. Because you said you wanted the right life and never once considered that it included me." "You ruined me," he said, which is a thing people love to say when they've sculpted their own ruins and want to call it art. "No," I said. "I introduced you to consequences." He lunged like language had stopped working. The security guard, who looked like a linebacker, appeared with admirable speed. "Sir," he said to Ethan, "let's not do this." I drove home. I rolled the windows down on Storrow Drive to let the Charles River pretend it was ocean. At a red light, I laughed. It came out like a cough. The next week moved like someone had pushed time down a hill. HR called Ethan in. They asked him about the code of conduct and the appearance of impropriety, and whether he had been honest with them about his relationship with a vendor collaborator. They did not say Brooke's name, but names find ways to be said. He came home with a box. The box held a succulent and a mug that said "World's Okayest Boss," which we had bought as a joke in a New Hampshire outlet mall because we thought we were flattering him without doing damage. It also held a picture of us from 3 summers ago, holding corn at a cookout like props in a catalog. "We could have handled this privately," he said, setting the box on the kitchen table like a baby. "You tried," I said, "with the police." He moved through the house like a man searching for something he had already lost. "I loved you," he said at one point, and I believed him. That is the part people want cut. It's messy. You can love someone and still run their life through a wood chipper of habit and chance. Denise worked the paperwork like a musician. She requested what needed requesting and anticipated the ways men stage their exits. I sent the boathouse clip and the ring clip to a private, unlisted drive for safekeeping, and I did not share it with anyone else. I did not even show Jenna, although she brought over pastries and sat on my floor and talked about nothing until the nothing felt like something. Brooke tried one last play. She called me from an unknown number and started with, "Can we talk woman to woman?" which is always code for, "I want to feel less guilty without changing anything." "We are women," I said. "We have spoken." "I didn't mean to." "You meant it every second," I said. "It's okay to admit you wanted what you wanted. It's just not okay to pretend you didn't want it when the bill comes." "You're scary," she said, and sounded almost admiring. "No," I said. "I'm tidy." On the day the divorce papers were signed, rain misted Boston like the city had decided not to commit to any weather. Ethan and I sat at a long table with a plant that was trying its best. He signed, and I signed, and Denise nodded, and the notary made it into civilization. We stood in the hallway afterwards, strangers pretending to be polite. "I'll get my stuff this weekend," he said. "Take the Vitamix," I said. "You always liked loud things." He smiled. It was tired and honest. "You know," he said, "you didn't have to do it like that." "Like what?" "So publicly." "You did it publicly," I said. "You brought her into our friends and our vacation and our life, and then you tried to make me the loud one. I just turned the volume up so people could hear you." He nodded, as if I'd given him a line he might use later. "I'm sorry," he said, and it was the kind of sorry that arrives late and still wants applause. "Me too," I said, and meant it. "You could have told me. We could have done this without the boathouse." We were quiet a while. Then he left, shoulders slightly bowed like a man carrying a backpack he couldn't feel. At home that night, I made grilled cheese the way my father used to after thunderstorms knocked out the power. A pan, butter, patience. I sliced a tomato thin enough to see through and added it at the last second so it would go soft without going slick. The kitchen smelled like a decision. Mrs. Alvarez tapped on my back door and brought me a tiny jar of her raspberry jam. "You are okay?" she asked. "I will be," I said. "Come in. I made too many sandwiches." We ate at the counter, 2 women with knees that knew stairs, and she told me about the time her husband left for 6 months and came back with an apology and a plant. As if we were a waiting room. She said the plant was nice, though. It made flowers that looked like my aunt's earrings. After she left, I took a shower so hot it erased every chorus of the day. In bed, I listened to a podcast about sourdough starters and the science of patience. I laughed when the baker said, "You have to feed it and then ignore it," because it felt like marriage advice we never got. Weeks turned into a rhythm. I learned the weight of the house with one person in it. I rearranged the mugs so my favorite didn't have to hide behind his. I bought a plant and didn't name it. I started running on the harbor walk at dawn, which sounds like a cliche until you are the only body moving on that edge between city and water and realize cliches are just paths worn smooth by people who needed them. Matt and Julia asked me to meet for coffee. They stuttered, both of them, trying not to say the wrong thing and failing in cute ways. I let them. They were good people who had been extras in a movie they didn't audition for. "Do you hate us?" Julia asked finally. "For being adjacent," I said. "No." "You're handling this," Matt said, as if narrating something on Discovery Channel. Like a person who knows which wrench to use. "That's the nicest thing anyone said," I said, and meant it. Brooke moved to a different firm. Someone told me she posted a quote about growth and learning and other excuses wardrobed in yoga pants, but I did not look. It wasn't devotion anymore. It was disinterest. One evening in October, the river ran black and neat under the bridges, and the air tasted like apples and impending snow. I stood at my stove and spooned chili into bowls, one for me, and one I covered and set aside in case someone needed it. I put on a record that made the living room feel like it had opinions. The window over the sink reflected me back at myself. A woman with fine lines like a good map. A woman whose kitchen had stopped being an airport. The doorbell rang. For a second, I thought it might be Ethan because the brain loves reruns, but it was a kid in a Habitat t-shirt holding a flyer. "We're doing a build day next month," he said, reciting. We'd love for you to volunteer." I took the flyer. The chili simmered like a cat. "I might," I said. "What do I have to bring?" "Work gloves," he said, relieved to be on script again. We got the rest. After he left, I ate by the window. The chili tasted like tomatoes and cumin and a version of myself who fed me when I forgot to feed myself. I thought about how people say, "moving on," like it's a bus route and not a road you lay brick by brick by brick. Later, I walked to the back door to check the lock, a habit my mother left me along with casseroles and hymns. The hydrangeas in the neighbor's yard had faded to paper. In the boathouse in Truro, dust was settling again. Somewhere in a closet, a sundress hung on a hanger and remembered a body. I cleaned the kitchen. I folded the dish towel neat. I put the extra bowl of chili in the fridge. I did not text anyone. I did not open the drive to watch any videos. I stood in the living room and listened to the city breathe. It did not need me. It did not love me. It did what it always does, which is to keep moving and not apologize for it. When I turned off the lights, the room held its shape. I went to bed alone and slept through the night for the first time in a season of weather. In the morning, I ran by the water and watched the sun tolerate the horizon and then climb anyway, like something forgiving itself in public. Forgiveness is not a gift you give someone who broke your life like cheap glass. It's a quiet you build in the aftermath, without confetti, without a crowd. My kitchen smelled like coffee and the faint ghost of garlic. The plant on the windowsill opened a new leaf as if that were the entire story. I opened the door and let in the day.